Welcome back in tonight's Patriot Report. A man who definitely lets you know where he stands on the issues, especially when it comes to our freedoms in this country. Joining me now, entrepreneur and outspoken patriot, Whalen. Sean, how you doing, brother?
I am very well. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on our second show ever of Real America on One America News. I got to say, I've been a fan. I've been social media stalking you for a while. Watching your posts, watching your lives, and let me tell you, you keep it real. And since our theme on this show is real stories, real facts, real America, I appreciate your sentiment a lot of times on your posts. They're a little R-rated for this show, so we'll keep it a little bit, more PC, which I hate being a PC police.
You got the wrong guy for that one. But we'll try. We'll try.
Let's start off with our theme tonight, as you probably heard if you were listening in with our previous guests, is law enforcement and how they're being treated in this country, and just an overall kind of picture of how law and order is being desecrated and decimated by the left, the media coverage, you name it, these anarchists with Antifa, and yes, even some of the folks in the BLM organization. I mean, they have just total disregard for law and order and law enforcement. I know you're outspoken on this. Give me your feelings on what's happening, especially in light of what just happened in Compton out in Los Angeles today to those two brave cops just sitting in their cruiser.
Yeah, that was a really disgusting video and a terrible thing to watch. I think there's two different things we're talking about here. The support of the law enforcement, which I believe the majority of people have. I think the vast majority of Americans have respect for law enforcement. I really do. It's an interesting conversation simply because what you see on social media, what you see on the news is such a small fraction of how people really feel and what's really happening. Breaking the law, it's nothing new. What we've done is we've normalized it and we've made it very much a race issue or a gender issue or a political issue. And to be really candid, I mean, nowadays you can do anything you want. And as long as you scream loud enough or mad enough or throw some sort of racial slur or something that offends you in the space, you can't argue with that. And at the end of the day, it's an interesting time, but I truly believe that a majority of America supports law enforcement. I truly believe that a lot of the people fighting the law enforcement support them as well. But there's definitely a narrative that's being spun to us to rile people up. You obviously know you're in the business of eyeballs and captivating people's minds, which is so CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, and they're giving people what sells. They're giving people what is bringing in ratings. But I truly believe that the vast majority of people support law enforcement, me included.
Well, I do, and we're trying to keep it a little bit different and real here on One America and Real America, this show, because I've been and become disgusted with the mainstream media and their coverage of law enforcement. It seems every time there is a shooting now in the past 6 months, they immediately go to the suspect, who in most cases, like you said, was a lawbreaker, had a criminal record, and they try to demonize the police officer before we even get the damn facts. Right. They have thrown the cops under the bus before we even know all the details that have come out. It disgusts me. Then they praise the crook, the bad guy, who has a laundry list of things, and we won't get into each individual one, but, rape and armed robbery and beating kids and all this stuff, and then they acted incorrectly the day cops were called. Maybe the cops overreacted in some situations. Obviously, in the Floyd case, on his back way too long, but other cases since then, they may have overreacted. But like you heard from the sheriff earlier in our show and the brother of a cop who was killed, they're regular people. They just want to get home to their families each day too. And when you have 1 to 3 seconds, and I've done the training in my reporting days, and maybe you have too, Sean, you have 1 to 3 seconds as a police officer when you're walking up on a car, when somebody busts out of a door, when somebody reaches for their waistband, to make that decision. So when these analysts and these pundits come out and say, why didn't they tase him? Why didn't they shoot him in the foot? What did they do? I'm like, have you ever been in that situation? Do you have any clue what it's like? And they're regular human beings, okay? They're not robots.
Yeah, it's just like the guy who sits in the cheap seat for the UFC fight screaming, punch him in the face, punch him in the face. Until you get down to the ring, you really have no idea what you're talking about. And I have trained with law enforcement in intense situations, and there's no excuse for someone making a poor decision. The Floyd case, I mean, there are, without question, good people and bad people on both sides of the equation.
Of course.
People don't realize there are literally millions and millions and millions of interactions between police officers and citizens every single year, millions of them.
Right, and let's point out, Sean, only 41. 41. That's the number from 19. 41 died where at a police officer's hand, and it was not justified. 41 out of millions of interactions, and more whites, and I think even Hispanics killed by cops, and not all the cops were white cops. They were black and Hispanic and Asian cops. 41 is the number. And you hear a narrative, blacks are being slaughtered in the streets by cops.
Right. Well, and what do people tune into? Headlines, right? We don't read. You don't have a generation that's been pushing or pushed to diving deeper. Most people don't know where they stand. They don't know what they believe. You ask people what they believe about politics, they don't really know. We just pick the lowest hanging fruit. And that's the business of media, to be really candid, which is why the fire is being stoked so heavily. And you look literally at just headlines that are completely inaccurate, that aren't even putting the real facts out there. And most people run with that. But I think, again, we're seeing a very, very, very small fraction of what's really happening in America. And to me, that's why a lot of people say, well, what do you think? What's going on? I think it's a beautiful time. I think what's happening right now is phenomenal because it's opening us to further conversation. We're having to go deeper. We're having to have these conversations. And to me, you really can't appreciate the light without the dark. And so, you never want to see anybody die innocently at the hands of anyone. But the truth is that's been going on since the dawn of creation, and that will never stop.
Yeah, you're never going to stop evil in men and women.
Real conversation.
Yeah, men and women sin. There'll always be evil. And that's why you need brave men and women in uniform to stop the evil. You don't defund them. Somebody the other day said, because we, of course, had the anniversary of 9/11 last Friday, I believe it was, and folks are yearning for that 9/12. We never want another 9/11. But do you remember how the country was so united on both sides? We didn't care about Republican, Democrat, race, color, creed, religion. We were all unified. And I wonder if this moment, like you just alluded to, Sean, is that moment again, but in a more stretched out several months, a year of all this anarchy and craziness and against law and order. And it's going to get that lion that's in the room, which is the most people in America, I agree with you, not the loudest voices on the right or the left, going, let's come together, let's back law enforcement, let's back law and order, let's have a strong military, strong borders, let's defend the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, my career, all these things. And I'm hoping that this is what it's culminating to. I want to touch on something because you always talk about it in your posts, and that's the rights of Americans being taken away, and especially during this COVID lockdown in only a handful of states now left, like Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, Michigan, New York, where you have liberal Democratic governors keeping these lockdown orders, ruining people's livelihoods. I know that you're based out of Utah, correct?
Out of Utah.
And I'm pretty sure that whatever lockdown you had, you were not doing because you're an entrepreneur and you want your businesses to thrive. So talk to me about how you've seen this just kind of erosion of our rights since March being taken away.
This has not been since March. This has been 50, 60, 70 years of this pacification, sit down, quiet down, slow down. Ever since we were little children, we were taught, don't say anything that's going to offend anybody else. And so we have this entire culture that's literally been programmed to be sheep, to do as they're told. If you get a letter from the IRS, just think about it from this simple point. I don't care whether you're rich or poor, you get a letter that says Internal Revenue Service, and you're instantly like, oh my God, what did I do? What's going on? Am I in trouble?
Been there.
Think about that. That's fear-mongering from the highest level, literally for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And so when you're told, do this or else, people are afraid of that. They don't realize that this country was literally founded by treasonous men who literally were like, screw the king, screw the deal. This is what we want, and we're willing to die for it. And so you're watching people literally shut your business, and they do. Put a Hanes beefy tea around your face to protect you from this scam-demic that's going to kill everybody, and they do. And it's really fascinating to sit back and watch and just literally see how people have been so easily swayed. Yeah. And that's simply because we've been raised this way.
Right, Sean? They're cutting me off. We're out of time, man, but I want you back on the show. I really like what you're saying out there. If you want to look Sean up real fast, what's the website? Because I know you do motivational speeches around the entire country, and your company, you see it right there on your hat, Lions, Not Sheep. I love the logo. How can we find out more information? What's the website?
You go to SeanWhalen.com or LionsNotSheep.com. You can find me.
Sean, come back on the show anytime, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Coming up after the break, it's time to get real with you. You won't want to miss this one. Real America will be right back.